So now we have 3 beautiful blocks done, and these are all from the publication that we gave you. On this one we learned so many terrific things. For example, in the original pattern, this was written with all half square triangles. So we spared ourselves a lot of seams by using this parallelogram, by also using a flying geese unit. I want to point something else out to you in this one as well. If you would have, you actually could have reduced even this seam in here. As you can see, that is a quarter square triangle. So this whole unit could have been built this way. I could have built this flying geese with this piece onto it, putting another quarter square triangle here onto this piece, and then Y seaming it into this unit. So it would have taken a little bit about teaching you about Y seams, but the great thing about using the AccuQuilt is that you reduce all those seams in there and you get a terrific block. This is a great one. It's a table runner in that publication that I gave you. This one is called the Lemoyne Star, and the Lemoyne Star in this particular case is made with the bob die, which is a single die, and it's also a 9-inch. So this one was made with a 9-inch cube. This one was made just as a single die, and I love this piece because it simplifies it in you have no Y seams in this. It looks so smart and so clever. And then the last one is a design by our friend Judy Martin, and this one combines a couple of cubes in with this. These pieces that are in here are 3.5-inch cut squares. Now those squares are in a 6-inch cube and in a 12-inch cube. It would never keep me from buying one, because when you buy the AccuQuilt cubes, those sets, you receive 40% off of the original dies. Now, and so I don't get wigged out about that. Plus I cut a lot of 3.5-inch squares, so when I cut a lot of these, as I had for your kits, I actually used both of the squares and sent them through the AccuQuilt. Now this piece is the quarter square from the 6-inch cube, because if you were to sew those together into 4, that would be 3 inches finished, so it's a 3-inch finished square. This piece is a 3-inch finished half square, also in both the 6-inch and the 12-inch, because it's the number 3 die in one of them and a number 5 die in the other one. Again, a very popular size that you cut. You cut a whole lot of 3-inch finished units. So this is a terrific piece. Now this big piece is only in the 12-inch cube. It's a 6-inch finished half square. So I've got these 3 beautiful blocks that are all 9-inch finished. So that's what I chose for this time. Now what I'm going to be doing is that this is what I chose for the setting piece. Now the ruler that I'm going to be using to cut these is called a side set ruler. And I love this ruler because it cuts those oversized pieces. Normally when you do side sets, and they're going to be the triangles that we're going to insert in between these, they have you cut an oversized square and then subcut it. What I love about this, and I intentionally made a stripe for you because I want you to see you can control the stripe on this. So when I look at this ruler right here, it says this is a 9-inch finished block. So here it says block finish size, and here it says 9-inch. Then I walk over here and it says I need to cut a strip of fabric 7.25 inches wide. So it says over here, cut the strip width. I love this. This ruler contains the instructions. I don't have to worry about it. They're right here to tell me what size. So I cut a 7.25 inch strip. Now what I did instead is that I had a choice. I wanted to sew this in here, and I wanted a line right about in the middle of this, and so I sewed a red stripe in between 2 black fabrics. Now I could have done this where I cut this strip at 1 1/4 and 3.5 and 3.5, sewn them together and had a little skinny stripe, or what I chose to do was a 3.25 and 3.25, and I sewed 1 3/4 of an inch in here. Now if you notice, what I did was then I pressed it this direction. Now you could press them both towards the red stripe. This time I chose to press them away from that stripe. And I want to show you the magic of this ruler. So the first thing that I'm going to do is, this is my salvage ends. So I press this well with my Laura Star, and then I'm going to take this ruler and I'm going to line up a line so that I can get these salvages cut off. And I'm going to go ahead in here and line up with that base, or I can line it up, actually it might be better for me to line it up with that strip in the center, because that strip in the center is really, the tops and the bottoms of these units could be trimmed off. And so I'm going to just line it up with that center piece. So I cut off my salvage fabrics, that's the fabrics that are here, and then I'm going to walk the ruler over here, and I'm going to set it up at this line. Now, let me get this in a little bit closer to show you what that looks like. So you see up here it says a 9-inch finished. So that's where I'm going to be cutting this strip at a 9-inch finished. And so that's how. So the first thing I'm going to be cutting is a half square triangle, and I'll show you right where that fits in. So I'm going to go ahead and trim that first one up, and I come down here and I slice it up there. Now if you notice on this piece I have a corner in there that is going to give me some chance to square this up when I'm done. Now I have this nice long strip here in this piece, and I can't cut it like this, but if I turn my ruler over like this, I can line it up. And so what I look for again is as I look on the back of this, you can see, let me get that up there a little bit closer for you, it says 9-inch finished right there. And so I'm going to make sure it's lined up along the bottom, and it's got 9-inch finished right there, because that's the size of my finished blocks. And I'm going to slice that out. And there I've got 1/4 square. Okay, now I'm going to turn it the other way. I'm going to flip the ruler over, and I can still see my 9-inch finished in here. So I'm going to line that up. I'm going to square it up there. Now, because I pieced this in here, I happen to notice on this side, it's not coming out quite so square. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to slice it right there. So the nose of the that unit is up here, it's even. But you can see down here on the bottom, I have quite a bit of fabric kind of slipping over. So I'm going to flip that over one time. And that is because I pieced that unit in there, and it might have made this a little cattywampus. So I'm just going to go back and clean it up a little bit here. And I wouldn't worry about this. If you cut this just out of your standard fabric, you're not going to have this issue. But again, you know how it is when you sew a long strip together and then you iron it? It can distort it. So now it's the same size. There we go. We've got that piece. And then I'm going to come in here and I'm going to cut another one. Now I can turn this ruler over, and I'm looking for that 9-inch along the top. And that is what they call, like when you talk about that edge being a little bit off, that's what they call in the fabric bows. So I'm going to tug that in just a tiny bit and get it to fit in. And that's mainly because of ironing that fabric. And so what it does is the stitching makes it bow out. So what I want you to see what's happening here is that I'm going to be fitting these pieces right in these spots. Look at this. Isn't that slick? And then I'm going to put my next piece in, like right here. And then that corner piece that I cut first is going to go right there. Look what's going on here. Isn't that beautiful? Really a lovely finish for this. You're going to love how elegant this looks. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut my next one. And I'm going to cut another 9-inch piece. So it's not 9 inches, it's cut out of a 7¼ inch strip. And what it is it's going to finish down so that I can finish that whole piece. Now, I'm going to go ahead and trim this one. But then I'm going to first go back and remember flipping this over, I'm going to just check my other side. Because again, because I stitched that piece in there, it can make it just a tiny bit off. So I'm going to go back here and I'm going to trim out that little bitty piece there. Normally you don't have to do this if you're using just straight fabric, but I chose to put this red strip in there because you're going to see it's going to make a very fascinating finish to this. So now I'm going to flip my ruler over and I'm going to come down here, and if you notice in here what happens is I drop that little nose off of the edge there, so you have a little mark there, and I'm still at my 9-inch finish, and then I'm going to cut this piece out. Now I don't have enough to do the whole thing, so I'm going to repeat the same steps again to do the other side of it. And let me step out here and I'm going to show you what it's going to look like. Okay, so when we go to sew these together, here's how they're going to look. You decide which one you want in which space, but I'm going to have this piece, and then I'm going to put this piece in here, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to look for that corner piece, because the corner piece is going to go right here, and I'm going to put my next block in here, and then so forth, and I'm going to finish up that way. But let me show you what it looks like from the other side. So when I do this other side, this corner is going to have to go clear over in that piece over there, because when I cut my next strip, I will get the reverse of those two pieces. So you see what's happening here? So technically what will happen with these pieces is this piece is going to go in the upper right hand corner. This is the lower left. So when I go to cut these the next time, then what will happen is I will get that other half square triangle out of there. Now when I sew these together, I'm going to be sewing them together in a diagonal. So I'll put this piece on here, this here, this piece on here, another quarter square triangle over there. So I will get 2 more quarter square triangles out of this, out of a second strip, and then I'm going to get 2 more half squares out of it so I can finish this whole piece up. Okay? Let me get to doing some more cutting and sewing. So I'm going to cut another set strip like that. So now we've cut one side of this for the side sets. And so we've got a corner, which on our side set, when we put this together, when we have these critters, our blocks laid out, we have to come up with the units that fit in between each one of these sections. So you can see those pieces that are there. And so this piece will go here, this will go here, this piece will go on this side, this piece will go on the other side. So I technically have 4 blocks here. So I only need a little bit more to put this together, which means I only need the corners. So let me show you what this looks like. I'm going to put this piece here. I'm going to put this piece up here. And I have this piece here. And I have this piece here. Then I have these corners. So let me scooch it all down so you can see it a little bit better. So that's where all these side sets fit in there. And I was able to get that out of one strip set. So the issue is that I only have to come up with somewhat to get all these last corners. The tricky part about these corners are, though, they have to fit in there so that I have the stripe going the correct direction. So the stripe is here. As you can see, it lines up well there. This piece will fit here, but it won't fit here because otherwise my stripe's going to go the other way. Now I could actually make a stripe go that way, in which case I would put this piece over here like this in the last corner. Let me get that corner out there. You see how that's going that way? So I could do that. That means that when I work with my next strip set, I have to figure out where I want those stripes to be. Now if I want them all to match and this all to go horizontal, that piece is going to go there and this piece is going to go here. So I've sewn together a smaller strip set in these pieces, and so I've got just this much of it that I've sewn together, and then I'm going to cut those into 2 half square triangles. Now if I lay my ruler down the way that I had it, I'm going to get another strip like this, and then when I turn my ruler over I'm going to get a strip that's going to go the other way, which means I'll have one more piece like this, which it won't fit in this corner and it won't fit in that corner to go in the correct direction. So how do I make that go the right direction? Well, I have to look at this corner up here and say, how do I make that strip set fit in there to go the right direction? Well, it has to be cut that way. So what that means is that when I cut this piece, I'm going to cut my first piece like this, and then I'm going to cut my second piece like this. So instead of starting with it going the one direction, I'm going to have to send it off the other direction. So let me go ahead and trim those guys out. And let me scooch these up so I don't cut into my work and show you what I mean by that. So when I started the last strip set, my first half square triangle that I cut it this way. So my ruler was facing like this. However, this time I'm going to cut it so it goes this way. And here I've got my 9 inches lined up here. I'm going to trim that piece out. And then I'm going to flip my ruler. So now that gives me my last corner up here. And flip it that way. The only reason that this is directional is because I have that stripe going a certain direction. How this would impact it is if you were dealing with directional fabric. So now when you look at my whole table runner, I'll walk it down here. I've got my corner piece up here. And I've got this piece here. Isn't that beautiful? My stripe goes exactly where I want it to be. I've got my next piece in here. And there I've got my quarter square triangle. Go way down there. Let me scooch them down. Because I know you need to see all this. This is really important. And, you know, while you're at retreat, and actually on the pictures on the handout that I've given you, it shows you what this finished piece looks like. But I want to show you how I got to that point. Now, at this point, I've got this corner up here. You see how my stripes going the right way? And now my stripes going the right way. Isn't that beautiful? Now, could I turn these around and make the stripes go the other way? Absolutely. All I have to do is this. See that? Let me get over here and show you on this end what that looks like. All I would have to do is turn them around and go that way. Now that makes a cool effect too. Since I'm at the point of just laying this out right now, I'm not sure which way I'm going to do it. But I love the look of that piece. And then also I'm going to be showing you, we have another fabric that you could add on to this. It's not included in this because we knew not everybody would like it. And so we have that piece as well that we can show you. So let's get stitching, and then I'll come back and show you how I'm going to trim this out, and then you'll get a chance to see how I am stitching these pieces together and what I decided. Now technically when I sew these together, this is what I'm going to sew together, and then I'm going to attach that piece. I'm going to sew the diagonals together and then sew the corners on. Really easy to piece it in. Okay, what we've got going on here now is I've sewn these sections together into units. Now when you look at these, you're going to see right away that they come a little bit off on the edge. That's because once we're done with this, we get to come back and trim it up. Now when I put these on here, if you notice that point right there is a little bigger than what the corner is. It's okay, it's going to get picked up. But what I did was I lined up that corner with the corner of my block, and it's extending beyond that piece. Now when it comes over here to putting this one point on, what I did with this was that and this is a trick that I show people in Mystery Mondays a lot, is that I folded this block in half and I used my point-to-point turner and I etched that in there, and then I was able to come up here and I lined up that point, and then then it's centered in that spot. So that little sign is on there, and as you can see, I got a little rebellious and I decided I'm going to put those stripes over there because I think it looks more like a present. That's my opinion. Now over here, these guys again, I lined it up with that corner so that my triangle was in the corner of that piece. I like to sew these from the side where I'm looking at the most amount of seams. That way then I can make sure that they're all flattening out. These were not ironed, the blocks. I used the point-to-point turner to press all of those seams, and I would strongly recommend you consider doing that. I did press this because I wanted that as flat as possible. Then I put the other corner on it. Now when I go back to my sewing machine at this point, I'm going to take this whole section and I'm going to line it up, and when I say line it up, the points I'm going to be lining up are the intersection points. I'm using my point-to-point turner to flatten out that seam, and this is where I'm going to sew it. So if you notice down here in this corner, I'm going to be bringing that in here, and it's going to have a big old crossover and a big old X right there. So I'm going to sew it up to here. This is my matching point right there, that corner, and so I'm going towards the triangles away from the block, and I'm going to sew right on down here, and I'm going to sew out through that piece. And then I'm going to attach this piece on, same thing, where this is my matching point, and I'm going to sew it right sides together and come back out. My last sewing that I'm going to do is I'm going to put on these last corners over here. So you can see it's hard to match up where those corners go, but on this one in particular I have a halfway mark. So how I'm going to line that up is the point of that triangle, which is called, it's a half square triangle, is going to be right there, and that's how I'm going to get what that seam is to sew that together. So I'm going to head on over to the sewing machine. I'm going to sew these all together, and then I am going to press it. So I'm pressing the seams towards the side set triangles, okay? Last step, look at how cool this turned out. I love what's happening with those stripes. That's why some design elements don't happen until you're working on it, and that's really, it wasn't something I planned out, and it wasn't until I started looking at this and teaching this to you, showing you what I was going to do, because typically on my last one that I did that I'll be showing you, I made the stripes go all the same way. This is a great little piece. It makes it look more like a present, which will give me some other ideas of what I'm going to do with this. Now in the back of this, when I pressed these, one of the things I did do was I did a little trim with my perfect scissors, and I trimmed this. I didn't trim it all the way to the stitching, but so that I could turn all those seams away from the blocks so it's even flatter, and which is a really great piece. Now the real magic of this ruler, the side set triangle ruler by our dear friend Kaye England, it's great how this works, but here's where the real genius comes in. It is also a trimming ruler. So we are going to go in and we are now going to look closer at how you trim this up and square it up. People ask us all the time if we square things up, and typically we don't. But if you notice, the way that she's designed this is that we now have oversized pieces. What we want to do is we want to preserve our 1/4 inches on this, and then we want to make sure that I'm hoping that when I put my border piece on there, if I choose to put a border on there, if you don't have to, that I preserve that part of the seaming, and so I don't want to lose that element. So this is my new rotary cutter of choice, the Fomori rotary cutter. These are resharpenable blades. We're pretty excited about this. And so I'm going to come in here and I'm going to be lining this up. Now if you notice on this corner, what I have going on is I have a line here that shows that piece and how that fits in there and how I can get these pieces to factor in and to get this squared up. So the first one I'm looking at here is, if you notice, there's a circle up here that shows up exactly at that point, and it's giving me a nice ample size away from that corner. And look what's happening here. I've got a line here and I have a line here showing me my block. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to trim this up this far. Now I've preserved my 1/4 inch around that piece. So I'm going to turn the piece here, and I'm going to do the same thing again, is that I'm going to line it up. So I've got my square in here, and I'm working at lining up this element that's down here, and so I want to find a 1/4 inch away from that. So I'm going to be coming first along this whole line, and I'm going to finish the whole piece. So again, what I'm doing is I'm lining it up so that I've got a 1/4 inch away, from this piece to this piece. And there we go. I've got it in there. Now I'm cutting this, but I missed cutting that, right? Well, that means that I have to turn the ruler over this way. And so I've got it in there so that my 1/4 inch is away from that ledge. Now if you notice there, it looks like it's off a little bit. So I'm going to cut this one first, and then I'm going to come back and revisit that piece. Okay. Now I'm going to go back and look at the two, and I'm actually going to line those two lines up because I still have my 1/4 inch along that edge. Okay, then I'm going to come in here and line it up here. And I've got that circle that is circling that intersection. Now let's turn the ruler over and see if we can get that to line up. I've got the circle circling the intersection. Yep. That was just one that was a little further off than normal. Okay? So now I have 1/4 of an inch away all along the top side of this. So let's go look at this piece now, the end. So in here, we're going to line this up this way. Let me get that side in there. Now, can you line your ruler up and just line it up 1/4 of an inch away and get it in there? Yes, you can. However, what I really am focusing on is I want my blocks to be square within these pieces. So this is the part that's square. It's not so much about the edge. The edge is really nice to be able to have that in there. Now this side, you can see I have a sizable amount of fabric in here. The great thing about the way that we piece this is this distance in here from the center on both sides is the same. See that? So our stripes are positioned correctly. That's because I centered that stripe in the middle of my center and in the middle of the center of the other two pieces. So what I did was I took the 7 1/4 of an inches and I did a little bit of math and figured out how many pieces do I have to put together to make those thirds fit together. Now, could you do this in a stripe that was different colors? Yes and no. The problem would be is that this is a directional piece. So I would not be able to keep the same colors towards the outside. So for example, if this was purple and green and red, then sometimes this would show up as then the green wouldn't always be in the middle. It would sometimes be on the outside, and that could be a problem design-wise for most of us. Okay, so I'm going to line up my next piece, that little dot in there, and we're going to walk it along there and trim out this whole piece. And now we're going to come in here. We're going to flip our ruler over. We're looking for that little circle to be in the center of that intersecting seam. And then we've got this line lined up with the block. And then we're going to keep trimming it up. We're going to walk it all the way down. I absolutely adore the white on whites that we used in this. You will notice that there's a collection of white on whites that we have this year, and I hope we get it again in the future. But it has different holiday themes on it. So you have different themes on them. Some people will have some of the themes mixed up where you'll have a Santa in with the reindeer, and that's fine. Santa and the reindeer hang out together, and sometimes with the trees. But this was a blast to work on this one. So I was really excited about getting to work it together with this. The white on whites are a separate line all to themselves, but they actually coordinate with several of the Christmas lines that we have this year. And they're just elegant, understated, simple, just really a pretty, pretty finish. All right, last piece to this. Now we're going to go tackle that last corner. So again, now look at this over here. I want you to notice this. I'm going to line this up. Do you notice how square that is? It's perfectly square. So Kaye has, the way that she designed this ruler is genius, because it's designed to be an overcut. Then that way, when you're putting your side set pieces together, you actually are lining it up and you're trimming out not your block, but you're trimming out those side sets, so this thing is really square. We have a lot of quilts where they show you how to set them on point, but this just makes it glorious. Look at how pretty that is. All ready to be quilted. If you want to add a companion border onto it, it's a great one to do that with. So there we go. Voila, you made it. And look at how pretty that is. Now, if you have too many things like this in table runners, think about it this way. This could actually have been made into placemats as well. There's other things you can do with this. This could be made into a bag. It could be made into tree skirts. These are 9-inch finished blocks. So this is a good taste of working with AccuQuilt cut pieces and how brilliant this is, and combining different elements. These are all in the publication that we gave you as a complimentary gift, and then the pages of each of these patterns are on the bottom of the publication. You're going to love watching that because you're going to say, wow, that was way easier than the instructions read. So happy stitching.